grants are non-repayable financial payments that range anywhere from about $1,000 up to $500,000. There are sometimes the odd opportunity that goes into the million mark, but they're very, very far and few between. Grants are often offered and it's really important to be very clear about what your strategy is when looking at grants, and then who to look to access money from. Competitions, for instance, you'll find that there are some places like the Jetstar Flying Start grant, but I consider that more a competition than a grant. And for me, a competition is something that is more of a marketing ploy rather than something that has very significant and specific strategic outcomes. They only accept a small number of successful applicants. The impact that comes from those type of opportunities is very small. So why would grants be offered? Generally, it's to activate impact. Now, I categorise impact into three different areas. One is economic, one is social, and one is environmental. So you'll find in most situations, nearly every single grant that's offered can be governments, it can be corporations, it can be philanthropic trusts that are offering money. The grant landscape in Australia at the moment is significant, and of course globally it's even more so. In Australia alone, we have over 900 grants available at any one time, and they're offering over $5.4 billion in funds to support to support impact. Some of the best places I go to find them. So any grant that's offered by the federal government can be found at business.gov.au, and it's very hard to just go into that site and find something. So I do search for grants specifically, and then see what comes up and see what's available. In Queensland, we have business.queensland.gov.au. Again, if you go into that site and you do a search for grants or assistance, you'll be surprised at what comes up. The business.grantguru.com.au, that's a paid subscription site, but you will find that they have a free access or a free search functionality, and then if you want something that's a little bit more specific, they do charge you a monthly subscription for that one. The community.grantready.com.au, again, is a subscription site. You can search for some grants there without paying, but if you want to get more detailed information, they do charge you a monthly fee. So what to look for when you go looking for grants? As I've mentioned before, it's really important to understand what your strategy is. So, a lot of people contact me and say, "Oh, Lisa, I'm looking for a grant." And when I say, "Well, what would you like to do with the money?" they'll say, "I want to spend it on marketing." About 5 years ago, the Queensland government did offer some grants supporting businesses to help very specifically with marketing, but that type of grant isn't around so much anymore. You may have found on the business.queensland.gov site, the Office of Small Business do offer small business grants. They offer a digital grant, they offer an entrepreneur's grant, and they also offer, I think, a growth grant. I can't remember. Within the entrepreneur's grant, you do have an opportunity to engage the services of a marketing consultant to help you with very specific, a marketing strategy, a marketing plan, but it's not to actually engage the services of somebody to come in and look after your marketing for you. So when you're looking for opportunities, be very clear about whether you're looking for funding to support a business initiative, whether you're looking to create a social impact, and whether you're looking to satisfy an environmental impact. So if we look at the business incentive, my little formula there is, if you're looking for business growth, you also must be looking to activate employment, which of course equals a stronger economy. So where you'll find business incentive grants are generally offered by local government, a little bit by local government, but mainly by your state governments, and to a lesser extent, the federal government. The federal government do offer some larger opportunities. They are most ideal for companies that are a little bit further along, so not your traditional small business. They're looking to help organisations that are employing sort of 50 plus people who are looking to grow quite rapidly, looking to employ significantly more people so that they can be larger contributors to the economy. Some of the more interesting grants that are available, and especially from the Queensland government and a little bit from the New South Wales government, includes activating partnerships between researchers and industry, because of course governments do acknowledge the importance of innovation today, and you will have heard that a lot throughout media. And their minds, they feel that if we can commercialise research, if we can get researchers more engaged with industry, that we'll have research done that is more applicable to what industry is looking for, and therefore we'll have innovation that actually means something, that that there's a customer waiting for whatever that innovation is that's being developed. Social impact, generally offered by governments, philanthropists, private and corporate, and they're seeking to activate impact of some sort. Part of their, strategy is to engage experts to deliver outcomes. Government and philanthropic funds do acknowledge that they can't be all things to all people, even though they would like to. They recognise that sometimes their strongest position is to offer funding to those who specialise in a particular area. So they're looking to activate impact in health and well-being, to support minority groups, arts, culture, those type of things. Anything that you can prove has a significant impact on population. So environmental impact, again, government philanthropists looking to activate the experts to come in and do what they do best. The focused areas there are generally energy efficiency, waste recycling, renewables, so those type of things. So I encourage people to, when they start to look for grants, and they've got a clearer understanding of what their strategy is, like why it's important to look for a grant for their business right now, I ask them to build a pathway. And it essentially is just a visual representation that shows the types of grants that are available for where you are in this particular stage of your business. So this is just an example of me mapping a commercialization pathway for a digital startup. You'll see that I've got there, notated where the pre-seed, seed and sort of Series A functions generally fall into place. I've identified the ideation, the local research, MPV, validation, and so on. So in underneath there are the grants that I've identified are good fits for your business at that time. A lot of people approach me and say, Lisa, I've got an idea and I'm looking for some funding to help develop it. It's very, very difficult to get money to support that type of activity. They really do expect that if you're going to put some effort into development, well then you also have to put some money into development. If you've got an idea and you're looking for $10,000 to pay a developer, well, that's a bit hard to come by. If you're an existing business who've got customers and your customers have told you that they would either buy more from you or they would use your service more readily if you had a particular type of digital innovation, well then there are some opportunities available for you. So things like the Entrepreneurs Program through Digital Brisbane, which is the Brisbane City Council, there's some opportunities there. The Small Business Digital Grant through the Office of Small Business that I mentioned before, there's up to $10,000 available through matched funding. When we start looking into local research, there are you'll see the number of them that are available. So some are available in New South Wales and Sydney, others are available in Queensland, South Australia. I'm sure that there are some opportunities through Western Australia and Northern Territory. I just haven't listed everything. You'll see that there's quite a focus from state government to encourage people to partner with universities. Things like the Hot Desk program, the MPV grants, it fits under the Jobs for New South Wales program, incubators. All of those type of opportunities are really important for businesses to look at when they're looking for some additional financial support. When we get into the validation stage, you'll see, if you come down the list a little bit, there's impact investment. There's a really strong focus by government and some philanthropic funds these days to actually put money into what we call green bonds or social bonds. These are effectively funding mechanisms to help well, they're not funding, they're investment mechanisms to help spur greater development in some of these organisations who are achieving really good things on ground. So it's kind of, well, it's not kind of, it's a different type of investment mechanism, different to those that we know from a traditional, seed investment or from your normal venture capital firm. There are specialist venture capital firms around that specialise in these green bonds or social bonds. So I encourage you to Google, have a little look, see what's around, see if in fact you feel that your business might sort of be suitable for one of those. When we start getting up into the international research side of things, there is an expectation that your business has the potential to be substantial and has the potential to employ quite a number of people in Australia, and that there's an attraction for an organisation or a group in an international country to partner with you to develop what you're working on even further. So it's important to be very clear about what you're achieving in Australia, and to also be clear about which international market would potentially be a good fit for your product or service, and then be looking for appropriate partners. Much of the time it's organised, or well, it's funding bodies encouraging Australian businesses to partner with international research arms. But again, there are some opportunities to go beyond that and partner with other businesses over there. Oh, sorry, just looking at my notes. And so when looking at what makes a successful application, it really comes down to three things: meeting the eligibility criteria, being aligned with the objectives of the funding that's being offered, and presenting robust evidence. So the eligibility criteria is really quite simple. It's usually a list of dot points that you find on every grant page, and it will say, you need to be an incorporated business in Australia, you need to have less than 20 employees, you need to be registered for GST and have an ABN, and potentially some other things. So it's really easy to tick those off and say, well, yes, okay, I meet all of those criteria. Where it gets a little bit trickier is when we start to look for the objectives of the grant, and making sure then that what we're proposing to apply for to bring money into the business, so that what you're proposing to do aligns with the objectives of the actual program itself. And that could be something like in engaging engaging people with disabilities in the workforce. It could be engaging or developing skills and capabilities of new entrants into Australia. So it would be a case of whatever you're proposing to do with that money needs to align very specifically with those objectives. When we talk about presenting evidence, we are talking about businesses who've got proven runs on the board. It's very, very difficult for brand new businesses to apply for grants because it's a risk. So, and of course, there's lots of competition. We'll talk about that in a moment. But it's really important that when you start to look for grant opportunities for yourself, that you're aligning with opportunities that you feel that you can deliver on strongly, not just deliver on, but deliver on strongly. So I'm just going to take a little break here and come to the questions that you've posted. So Nick, pardon? Yes, okay. So how to find the right grants. So that's excuse me, it's really difficult in that it depends on your business, what your vision is, where you're going, and if a grant, for instance, could be leveraged to help you get to where you're going faster. So, for instance, if I just revert back to the Office of Small Business digital grants that have been offered, some people I've spoken to are eligible to apply for that money in their own right, and other people are better placed to offer proposals as a consultant to businesses who are eligible to apply in their own right. So sometimes it's a case of determining if the fit is best for you to apply directly, or whether the fit is better for you to be a service provider to somebody who applies directly. That doesn't really answer your question.
That was pretty general, wasn't it?
Maybe if somebody's got further questions to that, please list them, and I'll do better at getting a little bit more specific. So Ruby and Ollie's, hello Lisa. How to find grants when you're not a not-for-profit? So the grants that you would be looking for are very specifically offered by state government more than any of the philanthropic organisations. And because of the landscape in Australia right now, there is a really strong focus towards innovation, as everybody probably realises. So, our small businesses aren't getting the same amount of focus as those who potentially have a really strong digital focus. So it's important to sign up to newsletters from places like the Queensland Government. Advanced Queensland is where a lot of the opportunities come from. The Office of Small Business is one area that, or one department that I feel gets overlooked quite a lot. They do focus on small business and less on digital innovation. So if there's going to be an opportunity for a small business, that's generally where it will be. It's important to note that there's just less opportunity for small businesses these days, which is a little bit unfortunate. They do offer more in mentoring programs, in free workshops, in networking events. Can't think of anything else just off the top of my head. So they really are trying to build skills and connections through those type of opportunities, and often you can get invites to them, and to attend is free of charge. So instead of being eligible for grant money that comes into your business, their mindset is that if we can get you connected, potential collaborations, help you be stronger in your knowledge, well, then you'll be a better business. So Catherine, what increases the chance of having a successful grant and receiving funding? Catherine, I might just leave you my response to that at the end of this next section. But this next section, I'll be talking about actually writing the application, and then maybe if you've got specific questions after that, post them, and I'll do my best to answer them. What would you say are the most complex components of the grant writing process? I'll cover that in the next section. We can hear you great. Oh, yes. I'm pleased.
That's important.
What is some advice you can give me if I wanted to start my own grant writing agency? Oh, I can talk to you about that after we finish here, if you like. I cannot hear you. I'm hoping you can now. What is matched funding? Okay, so generally, when funding is offered by the state government, for instance, there's a general expectation that you're going to contribute to the project. So when I say project, it's important that when you're looking for some funding, like for a grant, that you have the right mindset about it. And by mindset, I mean there is a project that you're going to undertake. It's got a start date, it's got a finish date, it's got a very specific budget, it's got very specific people that are working on the project, it's got very specific outcomes that you're looking to achieve. So on any project, so whether you're engaging a digital consultant to come in and build you a specialist tool for an existing business where your customers have told you that they want something better, well, then that will have its start date, its end date, a very specific budget, and the government will expect that you'll put 50% into the cost of that project. So, for instance, if the project is $20,000, the grant you could potentially apply for is $10,000, and then the government would expect that you would submit another $10,000. How do you justify the funds matched? These days, they actually are asking to see bank statements with the money in the bank.
Yeah.
Other times, they're actually asking for you to pay the whole lot up front. And once you can prove you've paid the whole lot up front, they'll reimburse you the 50%.
Wow.
So do you need invoices? Yes. Is it important to carefully demonstrate your eligibility and alignment? Yes, absolutely. So just going back to eligibility for a moment, over the years, I've encountered some people who would say, "Oh, I meet nearly all of that eligibility, but I'm just going to apply anyway." I would encourage you not to, because you're just wasting your time. Is the harsh reality of it. So the way that applications are assessed is there'll be a group of people assess the first lot of eligibility. So do you have an ABN? Are you GST registered? Did you earn less than $2 million in the last 12 months? And they literally tick all those things off. If they tick everything off, you meet that first round of assessment, they then send you on to the next round of assessment. So there's absolutely no point in applying if you can't make it through that first round of assessment. By demonstrating, so they don't look for evidence as such for eligibility at the moment. A lot of the applications are submitted online, and if you've submitted via Smarty Grants, for instance, you'll know that you have to put your ABN in, and then you have to hit the lookup button, and then it will verify that, yes, the ABN belongs to the company that you've put in the application form. Yes, it's GST registered, and it was registered on such and such a date. When it comes down to questions like, did you earn less than $2 million in the last 12 months? You don't have to submit. Well, it depends on the size of the grant. So for smaller grants, less than $50,000, for instance, you don't need to submit evidence that demonstrates that you've earned less than 2 million. But when you submit the application, you tick a box that says, if I need to produce evidence, I can, and I will if it's requested. So fudging isn't recommended because you just never know. And I have to say, more and more these days, I'm seeing applicants needing to produce more and more evidence on the things that they've said that they've either spent or they've achieved. So it's really important to keep that in the back of your mind. Suggestion, read this question. People could Google free grant lists that are available to take the pain away. Yes, I don't. Yes, so in those those internet addresses that I included in the slides are the two that I use all the time, and I find them to be relatively updated, relatively well updated, and contain quite a lot of really useful information. You need to be aware that there are some places that will ring you and say, oh look, for $500 I'll help you do a list of grants that you might be eligible for. Don't do that. Like there's enough free information around. It just takes a little bit of time to just to do a little bit of research yourself. And there's often free webinars like this happening quite regularly with different groups. So Google some webinars. Can set up an alert. Yes, great idea. Wonderful, thank you. Totally fine. Oh, great. Okay, awesome. Let's move on. How are we going for time? Oh, excellent. Writing tips. So writing is one of those things. So the biggest mistakes I see all the time is people rush. They just get the first thing on the top of their head down on paper, and then they think that that's good enough. And of course, it's never good enough. Like if you remember back in, all those years back in school, you could never submit your first draft. You always had to do, 3 to 5 of them before you really got the messaging right. So always prepare drafts. And one of the first things that I do is I literally just take a moment and I close my eyes, as weird as that sounds, and I imagine myself in the shoes of the assessor, having read through the objectives of the program, having read through the eligibility criteria, having read through some of the outcomes that the program wants to achieve. I literally do take a moment to try and understand the person who's going to read through this application has got a marking sheet that they have to mark to, and what might they be looking for. So, and I always find then that it takes it away from me, and all of a sudden I'm writing for somebody else, and it becomes easier. And addressing all of the assessment criteria is vital. So you'll find as you're responding to your questions that a lot of the time there'll be some tiny little hints under the question. So for instance, if it says, tell us about your business, and then there'll be a little byline that says, the size of your business, how long you've been operating for, what your target market is, and, what your strategy is, or something like that. So in your response, make sure that you touch on every single one of those things, because that's assessment criteria that they're looking at. And so important to just be human about it. Like I have a tendency of being far too analytical and using too many numbers. So it's really important even for myself to stop and remember that there's a human reading this, and they want to be inspired. They want to say yes to this application, and it's a reminder for me to touch base, to touch on them as a human. So now I've got permission from Ryan at Capiche to share this. So this is a really, really good example of, of a response. So generally, one of the very first questions is, well, tell me about your business. And of course, the painful thing about applications these days, and if you filled in any, you'll know, that they have word limits. They're even now starting to introduce character limits. So it's really hard to get a really nice flow happening. But this one, as you can see, we had a nice, a nice number of words in the limit. So this is what Ryan produced. So when you read it, Capiche is a powerful, world's first research tool that is changing the way researchers, companies, governments, marketers, advertising agencies, research companies, and business analysts approach and interpret unstructured data. So in that first sentence, like that sentence is longer than what I would normally like, but it hits everything. It tells me what the product is. It tells me the vision that he has. It tells me who his key market is and what the outcome is. So the outcome is to approach and interpret unstructured data. It's very powerful. It flows nicely. There's a nice speed to it. So you then go, okay, well, what's next? Currently, Capiche is available as a SaaS software product for customers to analyze and understand their data. So simple. I understand exactly what it is that his product does. Our platform is lowering the barrier to entry for companies of any size to analyze unstructured data. So that's his USP. He's telling us there that he's not the same expensive platform that others may have encountered before, and the barrier to entry could be price, could be ease of use, it could be any number of things. But the reality is he's helping people analyze their unstructured data. So Capiche has more than 1,500 unique users, so that tells me size. Since the company started, our most recent product launched in April has customers like. This response tells me very clearly that he can provide evidence to back up whatever claims he makes. If he's got customers like that, well, then there must be something special about his product. Capiche helps our customers make more informed decisions using the data available to them. This translates into greater productivity outcomes, increased profits, and a focus on meaningful innovation. It's an excellent example. So when writing, I encourage you to embrace the power of what you're delivering up front and write in a way. Well, okay. So have you heard of the power thesaurus? I can't even say it. Thesaurus. I use it all the time. I'm always looking for better words to substitute, and just to bring a little bit more strength to a response. Assessors want, as I said before, they want to say yes. But to say yes, they need to be inspired. They need to read what it is that you've produced and go, oh, wow, that's really cool. Or, oh, wow, look at the results that they're getting. So using a powerful language is really important. But of course, it's also important not to put people off. So there needs to be a level of authenticity in what you're communicating and for that power to be believable. I like reading at speed because when the flow of the information is, comes through quickly, there is a natural excitement that builds. So keep that in mind. Sophisticated simplicity. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I always use language that is understood, but really well aligned to the offer. So going back to Ryan's example, that was a fairly sophisticated response, but there was a simplicity to it that I can't say it. Sorry, whatever. That that helped you to understand exactly what it was that he was telling you. So again, language is really important. Words are really important. My biggest secret is time, not rushing. If you know that a grant is due in 3 weeks, we'll start working on it today. Start mapping out the framework. Start contacting consultants if you need to get quotes. Start having conversations. Start making notes. It's really important that you give yourself the time to make changes. So this is my checklist that I use. This is everything that I do, every single funding application. So I always log on to something. So if it's Smarty Grants, I log on to Smarty Grants and I copy out the questions into a Google Doc. And because I'm generally editing with other people, it makes shared editing really easy. But even for yourself, just a document that makes drafting as simplistic as possible. And I literally copy out every single question. So I don't just choose the ones where I've got the longest responses I have to write, because as I'm writing, I'm often looking at, what was the question before and what's the question coming after, because oftentimes you'll find that the questions can sometimes be a little bit ambiguous, and you'll prepare your first response and then you'll get to the next question and you'll go, oh, actually that response sits better in to that question, and I need to re-look at that first question and rewrite it. So every single question comes out into a draft document. Is the description of your startup or your business, powerful? It needs to be a strong response because it sets the scene for the whole application. Is the language positive and straightforward? Sometimes I find that some people will use a more negative language. So talking about the gaps, or why this is so bad, and I don't need to explain any further. You understand what a negative language is. So I encourage you to flip that and make sure that when you're talking about the positive outcomes, the positive impacts, what it is that your project or your activity is going to do. And clarity. If you read it and you go and you stumble over something, well, I encourage you to look at rewriting that section, because it's that flow, it's that ease of understanding. It's making sure that anybody who reads it knows exactly what you're talking about. I'm a huge fan of the Hemingway app. If you haven't heard of it, Google it. It's free to download. There is a paid version. I don't bother with the paid version. I really like the way the Hemingway writing style. So sentences are really, really short, to the point. They take out a lot of the descriptor words so that you that you stay very specific about what it is that you're trying to say. It also helps with word counts and character counts and that type of thing. So let your personality shine through. If there are particular phrases, or there's a particular, if there's a way that you speak, well, allow that to come through in the written word a little bit. Again, this is a way to bring the humanity into the process. The assessors want to try to know you a little bit better. So, whilst you're using your positive language and whilst you're being very short and to the point, finding some way to let your personality shine is really helpful. It's really important in funding applications that you balance the current, what's happening in your business right now, what you've achieved, why it's strong, why you're a good contender, and then you're balancing that with what you're aiming for. What are the milestones? What are the outcomes? What are you proposing to deliver? So making sure that that's balanced, so you're not too much in any one or the other, is really important. And again, are your responses a balance of factual and inspirational? So using a balance of data, so numbers, with some really nice language that inspires people, I find works really well. So getting funded is more and more difficult. It's a highly competitive space. Between 3 and 5% of all applications get funded. So for instance, if you applied for the recent Ignite Ideas grant, they received over 450 applications and funded less than 30. So, you know, and that's higher than the 5%. But, you know, that's the conversion rates that we're sitting at. Like a really good conversion rate is heading up towards that 10%, but very, very few of them actually approve 10% of applications that come through. They really are sitting down more at 5%. So to get funded, your business now needs to be delivering quantifiable results. So you need to be demonstrating evidence that you have a client base and the client wants what you're offering. They want some potentially innovation, so thinking of the innovation grants. They need to have told you exactly what they're looking for, and then it's up to you to interpret that and then take it, you know, the next step and say, well, okay, we're at a strong base here, but this is where we want to go, and we've got the support of our client base, so this is why we're a good risk. So by providing the evidence and the quantifiable results, you're de-risking the decision. So you're improving your likelihood of getting a yes. But of course,